Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Pokemon review series. In this episode, we're going over the Absol. Now, Absol is a very bizarre Pokemon. I think it's kind of unfortunate the way they designed it. Now, let's get right into why that is the case. So, Absol, Dark type, Dozing type, as is typical for Dark types. It's kind of the poster child for dozing. Because for a while it was really the only thing that a lot of people wanted on dozing sleep style. Well, not the only thing precisely, but like if you had Snowdrop specifically and you wanted dozing type, or you got dozing type, this was generally what you wanted to see because it is a rarer Pokemon. It's a bit more interesting. It's got the 16 pip requirement, which 16 pips is a hefty investment, especially with rarity of spawning, taking about 7 million drowsy power at Greengrass or Snowdrop for the base form, the 1-star form. It's going to be pretty hard to encounter, and it's going to be pretty hard to befriend. So in order to be good and in order to be worthwhile to catch, or worthwhile to hunt, a Pokemon with 16 pips that is this rare needs to really be offering something above and beyond what other Pokemon offer. And in this case, that's just unfortunately not the case. Now, it's got Charge Strength S, which is okay. It's the fixed variant, well, not the variant form. So, it's a little bit weaker than what it could be if it was otherwise the variable form. But unfortunately, the Absol just has a lot that's not really going for it. It's got a 18 inventory size, which for a single stage Pokemon is kind of sad. And it also struggles with its ingredients list, and I'll get into that in a minute here. It's got a pretty slow speed, being 51 minutes and 40 seconds. That's a pretty slow speed. We see kind of the standard throughout the game is 46 minutes and 40 seconds. I'd say above that mark, I consider it on the slower side. Below that mark, it's a little on the speedier side. And so yeah, smaller inventory, slower speed. Now, slower speed does kind of complement a smaller inventory, just because if it's got a much slower speed, it doesn't care as much about inventory because it's going to take longer for it to fill. But we've got ingredients proccing at a 17.8% ingredient rate. Now that is pretty sad, and the reason why that's pretty sad is because with a speed this low and an ingredient proc rate this low, it's rarely proccing ingredients overall. And even its skill rate is somewhat low for this low of a speed for such a weak skill. That's just another thing to be added there. You're not catching it for its skill, but it's not very good at the skill either. It does have Dark-type berries, which are one of the stronger berries, but to make a comparison that's made quite a bit, and I will get into this more in a minute here, Blastoise. Blastoise is faster than the Absol and has a higher ingredient rate. Significantly higher ingredient rate. And the Absol, for comparison's sake, it's that and that. Now, Water-type berry, I guess for comparison, I don't remember actually what the exact numbers are here. 31. Water-type berry has the same berry value, so even if you were making the case, because that's what it is for dark berry as well, 31 base value. So even if you made the case of, berry type might justify a slower speed in this case because the berries it's outputting are stronger, it should be slower, or have a lower ingredient proc rate, then that doesn't make any sense because they're the same value. So, now, the reason why I make the comparison to Blastoise is because they're both primarily known for cacao. So, the Absol is the mono cacao option, the Blastoise having cacao at level 30 and level 60, and a lot of players actually favor the Blastoise for the cacao over the milk, because if we look across the dishes, there aren't really that many dishes that would necessitate the usage of a mono milk Pokemon. Milk is a rarely used ingredient in the game, in a sense that the meal that takes the most amount of milk in the entire game only takes 14 per meal. Which, if you're getting your Pokemon to level 60, that can honestly be covered by there are a lot of skill specialists, particularly the EV lines, or all the evolutions that can have milk, and if they have mono milk, then they can usually pretty well cover all the meals that have milk in them. Maybe they might struggle a little bit with this, but you don't necessarily need an ingredient specialist for milk. So a lot of players opt for the cacao more on the Blastoise, and the reason why I mention this is, okay, if we're comparing at level 60, Blastoise is weaker than Absol for cacao. You see we're getting a comparison of 33 compared to 27 per day. At least with the evaluation that I have set up here. But also something to note is that Blastoise gets milk along with its cacao, and most of the meals that you're looking at for mid-game meals that take the cacao also happen to take milk. If you're looking at the Sweet Scent Chocolate Cake and the Lovely Kiss Smoothie, they both take cacao and milk. Even in more mid to late game-ish meals options, we have the Dream Eater Butter Curry with milk and cacao. So, like, even though it may be producing a little bit less cacao, the fact that it's covering the milk on a lot of these meals, I think, is just endlessly more valuable. And late game, Flower Gift Macarons takes cacao and milk too. I think in most circumstances, that at the level 30 point, even though the Blastoise is producing 6 less cacao a day, you're producing infinitely more milk than what the Absol is offering. But maybe at level 60 things change. The really sad thing is when you get to level 60, Blastoise actually outperforms the Absol. And a big part of that is, even though the Absol has the mono ingredient list, this relatively low ingredient rate compared to this ridiculously low speed makes it just turn up to actually produce overall less cacao than what the Blastoise does. While the Blastoise is also producing milk and producing more berry, well, maybe less berries because it's got a higher ingredient rate, but it's got a faster speed. Also, it's producing more ingredients through its skill. Just overall, the Absol is worse than the Blastoise. Blastoise also has legendary coverage right now, having the Suicune partnered with it, which really benefits Pokemon with higher ingredient rates. Because ingredient specialists with higher ingredient rates, because it's more likely to give more off those fixed procs per day as well. So really, in terms of cacao, you don't really want the Absol doing it. So what else can the Absol maybe offer us in terms of synergy or like its other ingredient options? Now, here's where we're getting to a little bit of discussion of some of the poor designing on the Absol's part. And the devs, I will give them this. They have tried to address this issue in the past. We've seen Absol actually receive a couple buffs because it is just that lackluster for such a hefty cost. The Absol really hates its inventory size. 18 sounds really, really high, but like I said, on a single stage Pokemon, you don't gain extra inventory for evolution. So it's fixed at 18. It can gain, I think it's 6 more from ribbons. 6 or 8. I used to have them memorized. Even if it's 8, if we go on the high end of that, that'll still only bring it to 26. Its level 60 apple proc is 12 apples. The other two options, the mushroom or the cacao, is 7. Even if you get that to 26, you're talking 4 procs of either of these really high procs, or if we're talking 26, one apple level 60 proc, one level 30 proc, then you're already at 20, and then you get like another level 30 cacao proc and you're at 25. You also got to consider that there's berries in there filling it up as well. It's going to be filled in just a few procs with ingredient procs this high. So really, Absol's in a weird spot in that it's not just looking for ingredient finding subskills. It wants ingredient finding subskills in nature, of course. Speed of help is always good on every Pokemon in the game. But it almost really needs to have at least one inventory subskill to be even usable. So right off the bat, you're looking for inventory, ingredient finding, maybe some help speed. It's just spreading itself really thin on what it wants, and being a 16 pip Pokemon, it's going to be difficult to get all of those sub-skills on just one Absol that's perfect for you. But then, what can it offer in its other options? Well, I personally am a huge fan of the ABA list. It produces, if you can get it to level 60, it produces cacao and apples in an almost 1-to-1 ratio, which is pretty nice for particularly for the Petal Dance Chocolate Tart. Now, this is kind of a bit more niche strategy in a sense that I like it because it's very, very flexible, but it's not really that strong. It gives a lot of flexibility, and you can just throw the Absol on any dessert team. And where it's nice is if you have an Absol that's got decent enough sub-skills in nature, and it's got the ABA list, you can pretty much always reliably just make this meal with just what the Absol's producing. So it gives you a lot of freedom to throw skills specialists or berry Pokemon on the team. Maybe even something that'll buff the meals a little bit more in other ways. You can just throw it on and not kind of think of it for dessert weeks. You got your meal just covered in one Pokemon. I talked about that a lot quite a bit with the Quagsire, with the Spore Mushroom Curry. The Quagsire's got a little bit more going for it in that the meal that it's making is 4,162 in strength, versus the Petal Dance Chocolate Tart is almost 1,000 less base value, which is unfortunate, to say the least, but that's something that the Absol can offer. It's also kind of nice for Lovely Kiss Smoothie. I think this is also a pretty good mid-game meal for apples and cacao, but I don't necessarily recommend the Absol for it. I recommend Blastoise because a lot of players can get a lot of apples through Raichus, through Raticate. Like, a lot of the early game catches just have apples on them. And a lot of mid-game or early-game players will have a lot of apples stockpiled just by what their berry bonds are producing. So you don't necessarily need the ingredient specialist to produce the apples and the cacao. And once again, that Blastoise is going to be making milk and cacao in a near 50-50 ratio, which is what you need for this. So overall, there's just not a whole lot of synergy there. If you're looking at apples and mushrooms, because there is mushroom in the level 60 slot, first off, cacao and mushrooms, I think, literally have nothing anywhere. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I'm pretty confident to say there's nothing that has mushrooms and cacao in the meal. So, zero synergy with the base and the C ingredient. But then, there's a little bit of synergy on apples and mushrooms with the Neroli's Restorative Tea. But I feel like if you're making Neroli's Restorative Tea, you're trying to simplify the amount of Pokemon that are on the team, and once again, really use the apples of your berry specialists. So, and you're not going to be needing that much, and then you're still producing cacao that you're not using really in the meal. So it's just kind of weird. It's a weird spot. It's a very unfortunate design Pokemon, and I think it needs a buff, honestly. I don't know what kind of buff that would be. I'm personally hoping for, if you follow the channel quite a bit, you'll know that I personally hope that there's a dark type, a very particular dark type legendary coming. I think it's on the horizon, but if it's not, then that'd be unfortunate for the Absol, because that might be one of the few things that it ever has going for it. In that case, I think that'd be especially powerful, given that you have your meals covered in one dish, or one Pokemon. But, yeah. That's pretty much everything there is to be discussed about the Absol. If you want to hunt it because you really like its design, really I don't think any meta player is going to really be hunting this thing. Then you hunt it at Greengrass or Snowdrop, because those are the only places that it spawns at. I think it is kind of worth noting as well, given that it's a 16 pip Pokemon, maybe wait out for Valentine's Day to really do a hunt. If they run Valentine's Day the same way they did last year, then the Absol will get spawn rate increase, which I think is really the only time that you should be ever like intentionally hunting any 16-pip Pokemon if you're looking to hunt them. But yeah, So, if you've learned something about the Absol, learned something about the game, then please do leave a like and subscribe. I do always thank you guys for watching, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.